Hello there everyone, it's me, Powerman. I've been playing a ton of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel recently, and so I had a lot of thoughts about this game as someone who has played the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG on and off for basically my entire life. I know it might seem a little misleading that it's first impressions, but I have, something like 70 hours played of this game on Steam. But considering the lifespan that it seems like this game is gonna have, I think 70 hours is actually like a pretty good representation of a first impression. I'll just be playing some footage of Master Duel that I've recorded previously, just as some B-roll, just to give you guys something interesting to look at while I ramble on about this. For those not aware, Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel is Konami's first real attempt at making a true simulator for the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game. There's obviously been plenty of video games in the past that you can play Yu-Gi-Oh! In, but this is really the first one where it actually feels like there's a lot of time and effort into simulating the card game experience and not just creating a video game experience that just happens to be Yu-Gi-Oh!, if that makes sense. And with it being a brand new simulator compared to a bunch of other card games with already established simulators, there's a lot of complaints about the game feeling very lacking in terms of content. And I actually disagree in terms of the game doesn't have enough content in it, because if you're just talking about just amount of stuff in the game, that is completely false. Over 10,000 cards, there's actually a pretty beefy story mode to mess with, and there's multiple ways you can play through the story mode, and there's, online simulator, and there's been events so far. But the people complaining about a lack of content in this game, I find are mostly Yu-Gi-Tubers, people whose entire job it is to talk about Yu-Gi-Oh! On the internet and have an incentive to just blaze through all the content as fast as they can because they're doing it all day. So yeah, MBT is going to complain about there not being enough content in solo mode because he streamed it for 2 weeks straight and crushed literally everything in the game. Whereas me, someone with a full-time job playing for an hour or two a day, I still haven't beat everything in solo mode yet. I actually find the solo mode to be pretty great, actually. I feel like my biggest complaint with the way the solo mode works is that it's not really a proper tutorial. That it doesn't straight up teach you how to play Yu-Gi-Oh!, but rather if you're already familiar with the game, it gives you this interesting opportunity to play around with decks and archetypes that you normally might not be playing at all. But the weirdest thing about this game, though, is that there's basically zero Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime influence anywhere in this game. Because I'm so used to seeing the anime be so heavily tied into the video games for Yu-Gi-Oh! But card game Yu-Gi-Oh! Has kind of its own thing going on. There's monsters that don't show up in any animes anywhere. Or, lore that's exclusive to the cards and has nothing to do with anything. The closest reference to any of the animes is maybe some of the monster summon animations are for monsters that got very famous from the anime, say Blue Eyes White Dragon, for example. And obviously cards that have artwork that references specific moments from the anime. But aside from these niche fringe cases, the game doesn't reference any of that stuff at all. In terms of the actual quality of the game, I feel like it's a good base, but I feel like the presentation just feels a little generic. I'm not going to say it has no production value, because clearly there's a lot of effort put into this game about the way that cards will smack down and stuff, and the animations and the card art that can move a little bit for certain ones. But it just feels a little bit vanilla. Although the genericness can kind of be remedied a bit with stuff like certain duel fields that are references to specific cards like Gear Town, or you have the whole mate system, which is cute little smaller versions of monsters or items from the card game. So stuff like Pot of Greed, Dark Magician, a chibi Borlo dragon. So that does give the game some of that Yu-Gi-Oh! Personality back, even if the initial stuff you start out with makes it seem extremely, extremely bland. But this brings me to probably the strangest part of Master Duel, are arguably the worst part of the game, which is the actual system to acquire cards. I understand why they did it the way they did it, but it just is super confusing and unintuitive if you've never used it before. Firstly, the rarity system. There's 4 different kinds. So there's normal, rare, super rare, and ultra rare. And basically every card in the game falls in one of these categories. These are like how often you'll be able to pull them out of a pack. So it'll be like you get a bunch of normals, you might get a rare, super rares, you'll get every once in a while, and then an ultra rare will be the hardest to get. Pretty simple to understand, right? But there's this whole separate holofoil system that is not tied to rarity at all, where you can pull the same normal card that you've gotten a billion of, and then just get like the shiniest, most rainbowy one just out of a pack. But aside from just looking pretty and having some nice little sparkle effects while you duel, the holofoil system only really advantage over a normal card is that you can dismantle it for more card points for the crafting system. So you can dismantle cards, and so you'll be able to make any card of the same rarity provided you have enough of the card points. So you can't just take a bajillion normal points and then craft an ultra rare out of it. That's not how that works. It's got to be the same rarity. But as I was crafting decks and I was dismantling cards and then making new ones, that I found that the actual rarity categorization of cards, of which rarities they got put into, just seemed kind of random. Obviously, this game isn't going to directly translate the constantly fluctuating TCG/OCG card prices into a hard, rigid system like this. But here's a weird example of the randomness of the rarities, just really screws things over. So I was able to build a Drytron deck with actually very little problems. I mean, I don't have an entire extra deck yet, but I was able to build out a good amount of the extra deck and the entire main deck with very, very little issues. However, my stupid gimmicky Layer of Darkness Fang of Critias deck, which uses the field spell Layer of Darkness with Lilith, Lady of Lament, to tribute herself to get trap cards, to have Fang of Critias fuse them off to summon stuff like Mirror Force Dragon or Doom Virus Dragon, which, yes, it's as janky and dumb as it sounds. That deck was way harder to actually build than Drytron, just because of the rarity of all of those cards, which seems very weird to me. Like, why is this deck way harder to build a Master Duel than the actual best deck in the game? It makes no sense. And God help me if I see another staple card be an ultra rare. The pack system in this game is just absolutely insane. Because if you look in the store, you will find like 3 packs in the store. So you have 2 smaller sets with, you know, some more classic focused cards, and then you have more modern meta focused cards, and then you have a pack with like 6,000 cards in it. I'm not even joking, that you can pull from potentially a 6,000 card pool. So if you have these 3 packs that have either really small card pools or too big of card pools to actually be able to pull anything you want, how are you going to build any of these decks that people are running around with? That gets into the secret pack system. In order to easily be able to access cards of a specific archetype without having to just forcibly craft everything yourself, is what you have to do is craft a super rare or higher card within a specific archetype in the deck building screen, and then you'll get a little prompt that allows you to buy packs that consist of that specific archetype, called a secret pack. Usually they'll have 1 or 2 archetypes in there. So they have their own little dedicated menu that you can go back and purchase more of, but the thing is that they have a timer, that you don't just unlock, say, the pack for Thunder Dragons once you craft, I don't know, a Thunder Dragon Matrix or something. That you have a 24-hour window to be able to buy that pack with gems. And then you have to go and craft another super rare or higher to re-unlock the ability to buy that pack. But despite all that, I actually found that the secret pack system allowed me to build a couple of decks pretty decently with not very much issue. That I was able to get most of the stuff I needed for like 4 decks. However, past like 3 or 4 decks, I feel like Master Duel really just shuts you down if you're trying to do more than that. That if you're not modifying one of the existing structure decks that exist in the store, that if you're trying to build an entire new deck from scratch beyond a third or a fourth, that the game just kind of tells you no. That you have to spend money on cards in order to get the pulls that you want, in order to either get the crafting material that you need, or specifically the actual cards. But since the beginning of the game, I found that the massive running faucet of gems has turned into a very, very slow trickle. I'm lucky if I get like 300 gems in just like an hour and a half of playing now, because I've done so many of the missions. I got the duel pass. I got all the gems I could earn from the duel pass. I went through a lot of the solo mode and got a bunch of the gems from that. I've ranked up a ton in levels in terms of my duelist rank, etc., etc. I've gone through multiple seasons of ranked play. The game can just sort of really starve you for the ability to build a deck, because you might not get any super rares if you're getting a couple hundred gems a day. That if you're getting 300 gems, you're spending it on 3 packs. You might not get a super rare, so you were getting a bunch of cards that you don't even want just so you can try to get a super rare that you can dismantle and then spend on a card that you actually want to try to get the pack that you actually want. So if you're like me and you just love playing tons and tons of decks, that if you used to play Dueling Book or Yugioh Pro or any of those other third-party simulators and just loved having a giant list of decks to play around with, that Master Duel really doesn't allow you to do that. You can have a couple favorites that you don't have to pay a single cent for, but past that point, the game really expects you to pay up for gems. And that genuinely just kind of sucks. Now, I have been playing this on PC specifically. I've been playing it on a desktop with a pretty beefy GPU, so I haven't had any, like, performance issues. However, it seems like from my experience with playing on a lower-end laptop and seeing reports of people playing on other platforms, that it seems like, aside from a high-end PC, the game experience isn't great. I actually tried playing this on a 2015 laptop with an NVIDIA GTX 900 series graphics card in it. So not even the integrated graphics, just a discrete GPU. For the life of me, I could not get the game to run at even like a consistent 30 FPS at 720p. I'm sorry, what? I feel like for a trading card game simulator, this should be as like broad mass appeal as possible and played on the widest amount of machines possible. Why is it not able to run on like integrated graphics? It doesn't even seem that intense. The most intense thing about it is that there's like a couple 3D models and that's it. And yet you can't play this thing on a laptop that's 6 years old without it being a terrible experience. I don't know why. Even with my desktop, the game exhibits some very bizarre behavior I don't think I've ever seen a PC game do. See, normally with a game on PC, that if you're not utilizing the full potential of the graphics card, you will have a lower percentage usage than 100%, but the clocks of the card will still be running at the maximum possible clock. So for example, if I'm playing, say, I don't know, Doom Eternal, and I'm running at 4K 120, that my card might not be hitting 100% all the time. It might be sitting at like 70%. But the card is still running at 2.2 to 2.4 gigahertz pretty consistently. And even on older games, where the usage is closer to 30%, I am still going to be hitting 2.2 to 2.4 gigahertz. But Master Duel is the opposite of this. And I found this out because I opened Task Manager once while I was playing Master Duel and saw my GPU usage was sitting at 70%, which did not seem right to me. So I had to go check AMD's graphics settings, and turns out, even though the GPU was running at 70% load, it was only doing so at like 500 megahertz. So overall, I think Master Duel, while it does clearly have problems with its free-to-play roots and just trying to incentivize you to buy gems, and just its bizarre structure as a result, that I do find that it's a very genuinely impressive card game simulator. There's so much love and care put into this game that if they were just to make something like this for the hardcore players, they could have easily just made something that was extremely visually basic. But they didn't. They made it like a normal video game, made it visually appealing, made things feel like they have weight, have interesting sound effects, have an interesting soundtrack to go with it. So clearly, this was the product of good developers that clearly cared. So anyways, guys, that's it for the video, and have a good day.